So this time a year ago, we were preparing ourselves for 21 days of lockdown. The country's first lockdown was due to increasing numbers of COVID-19. Businesses and schools had to close. In fact, schools had already closed. South Africans were forced to remain indoors, only allowed out for emergencies. It's been a rough year as we look back at the impact of the lockdown. Our reporters are Lethiwe Mdluli in Durban, Ronald Masinda in Cape Town, and Lindokuhle Xulu in Johannesburg. Hello to all three of you. Lethiwe, I'm going to start with you in Durban. You've spent the day speaking to ordinary South Africans about the lockdown. You've also had a chance to speak to an essential worker. What did she tell you?
Yes, Telly. So today I made my way around the city, just basically getting reactions from ordinary South Africans about the year-long lockdown. While speaking to them, all of them did say that they did not expect for this lockdown to last for a whole year. They did expect for it to just last for 21 days, but that was not the case. I headed to Ballito earlier on, where I spoke to an essential worker who's a nurse, and she basically shared some of our challenges and the challenges that they had to deal with. She was one of the people that contracted COVID-19 during the second wave, and her whole family ended up contracting the virus. And she just shared how it was hard for her family, but they made it through, fortunately, and they didn't lose any loved ones. She also shared how it was very hard for them as essential workers to see their colleagues die because of the virus. And she also did say that during the start of the COVID-19, because she was an essential worker, she was one of those people that had to get up and go to work. And at first it was scary for them because no one else was actually going to work. While speaking to Renee Hrobler earlier on in Ballito, this is what she had to say.
Well, since the first lockdown announced, a lot of people couldn't go to work. I had to go to work and continue with my shifts. I'm a healthcare worker, so we did have we were affected with COVID-19 patients. And I had to come home every night. I work night duty. Come home every night and have a shower. Come every morning. Come have a shower in the morning before I greet the house people, and then just hope and pray that I haven't brought anything from work, and try and continue as normal as possible. But also worrying because we didn't understand this disease. We don't know what was waiting for us the next day. And what the most important thing is what you can bring home to your family. And just trying to maintain a little bit of normality.
Yeah, it has been a particularly difficult year for healthcare workers on the front line fighting an illness that we knew so little about just a year ago. Lethiwe, we've also in Durban spoken to small business owners, particularly in townships around Durban, and small businesses also took a serious hit, didn't they?
Yes, I've been speaking to them, and I spoke to street vendors and a lady who owns a hair salon in the township. One thing that they are saying is that since it's been a year-long lockdown, they were not able to make it back. A lot of them actually ended up closing their businesses for good because the economy took a hit because of the lockdown, and we know that the country is still struggling from that. So a lot of business owners, small business owners, ended up closing down. But the street vendors that I spoke to did say that after lockdown level 2, they were able to make it back and try and get back on their feet, but it has not been the same. While speaking to some self-employed gentleman also, he did say that he was able to make about 1,000 rands a week before the lockdown, but after the lockdown, he was forced to actually register for the 350 rands grant because he was not making any income, and he was the only person who was working at home. But while speaking to someone, a business owner rather, in KwaMashu Township, who owns a butchery and also a liquor outlet, he did say that even though he laid down some staff, he was able to pick up, but it's been a tough time for them. This is what he had to say while I was speaking to him.
That was a disaster, Sissy, because we had to close a lot of our businesses for that lockdown, and luckily that time the banks had given us some relax to pay. We could take, the banks allowed us to not pay for, I think, 3 months or so. But yeah, but time was a big disaster. It was very bad for us because we had to close a lot of our businesses, and most of our customers were staying at home, and yeah, we just didn't make any money.
Yeah, Lethiwe, it's just a reminder that while it was particularly difficult, we are still in a recovery, and many of those small businesses are still trying to make ends meet. So that's the picture in Durban. Ronald, to you in Cape Town now, and you focused as well on the elderly, and you've spoken to people from an old age home, and that's an interesting angle because, of course, it was very difficult for elderly people many of whom just simply were not able to see their grandchildren for a very long time this year.
Yes, indeed, Sally, but what has been well documented during this 12 months, Sally, has been the tremendous hardship that many people have had to endure, people who have lost jobs, people who have lost loved ones, the humanitarian crisis that without food that has created for many households, as well as the issues such as gender-based violence and other crimes. But what we are forgetting, Sally, is that there are positives out there. There are people who are beacons of hope for many South Africans. And one of them is Lindokuhle Xulu. She's been running an old age home for many years in Kwalanga and many outreach programs for over 35 years, including assisting the homeless to find them shelter with very little support. This is what she had to say when we spoke to her earlier.
We've got 35 people that are here, most of which are on diapers, most of which are on wheelchairs. And ours is to look after them 24 hours a day. We've got 2 shifts, a shift of the day and a shift of the night. In spite of not being funded yet by the government, we've tried to sort of make this place good for these people. There was a lot of demands if you are running a frail home. And with the help of an organization called Ikamba Nabantu, we've managed to change this place to suit the government needs. And we are hoping that the government would come forward and help us. Because everybody that is here, standing here in a uniform, it's amazing how they give their time, earning a stipend. Nobody is getting a salary here. And it's so hard because these people have a lot of underlinings. So their meals have got to be very nutritional, which again is a big thing. And the need is still too much. Our waiting list is endless.
What an inspiring woman. Also, of course, during the first lockdown, there were provisions made for the homeless, and there were shelters set up for people who wanted to stay off the streets during this lockdown period. There was an extraordinary effort to look after people, certainly in the beginning. Today, you've also spoken to someone who runs a soup kitchen.
Yeah, so we also went to Mitchell's Plain, Sally, an area where it's been well documented the issues of gang violence, and one person who's making a positive change is a lady by the name of Ballito. Now, when she started her own soup kitchen, she actually took her own money, her own pension, as long as her husband assisting her in order to ensure that children don't go to school feeling hungry. And we all know when the lockdown started, the initial stages, where a lot of people in Mitchell's Plain were in protest. Many are saying that at the time that there was no work out there, so how did government expect them to feed themselves? And Bonita Wood has been making quite a huge difference for many people, even the homeless from areas in Mitchell's Plain. Let's take a listen to what she had to say earlier.
I started off with me and my husband's pension. On our pension money, friends and family, neighbors used to donate for us whatever they can give. And this was way before lockdown, Ronald, because the need out there is heavy. So yes, whatever I have, I started off out of my cupboards. I used to make out of my cupboard whatever I have, whatever I can share with these people. As you can see out here, our people, our youth is in need. People don't have money, and this is how they depend. They know coming to Auntie Bonnie, where the Auntie Bonnie must share her plate with him. And that is how we went through. And I so much want to thank for now, Ronald, we got the organization eNCA that's helping us amazingly. eNCA is helping us to help us, giving us grocery stuff, cleaning aids. You know, they came to our aid, and we thank God for Ikampa that's helping us. So that is how Auntie Bonnie is giving food to these people.
You know, Ronald, in an incredibly difficult year, I think it is those extraordinary acts of kindness that make us feel proud to be living in South Africa. Just really powerful stories. Thank you so much, Ronald. Let's come now to Johannesburg, and I'm joined by my colleague, Lindokuhle Xulu. Linda, you know, in many ways, the lockdown, there were two different kinds of lockdown, really. If you were a person of means with a job, with a comfortable home, it wasn't necessarily easy, but you could absolutely get by and cope. But the real difficulties were for those who had no home or who lived in a one-room home, who had very little means, who were living hand to mouth. I know that you've been speaking to a lot of people on the streets of Johannesburg today. Did you see that difference in response to looking back at the lockdown between those who have and those who have not?
That's definitely some of the responses we got, Sally, in terms of those that are appreciative of the fact that there were opportunities that were created within the lockdown itself. But some of the people, of course, are still saying that despite the fact that the lockdown has somewhat subsided to an alert level 1, that is seeing a lot of movement on the streets, but they are still saying that even the recovery phase of their particular businesses is still quite slow. They're saying that it's never going to be the same as it was before. And let me just make an example of some of the people we've spoken to. We've spoken to a taxi driver who says that it's not the same as much as the movement has been allowed in many of the industries that feed into their taxi system. He says that people have, in the lockdown, developed certain trends. They have learnt a few lessons from there that are changing life as we know it. One of the things he cited was the fact that people are now using e-hailing services, and as much as it was in fact expensive for them before, but now it's a different story because they were able to coordinate, they were able to take lessons from the fact that they can now group themselves, pay a e-hailing service, whether an Uber or a Taxify, that will take you from Braamfontein and come here to other parts of Randburg, and that when you share it would essentially mean that 4 people are now paying the same money they would be paying in a taxi, a normal taxi. So they're saying that the life has been different. But also one of the people I've spoken to is one that is in the livestock business, and we are speaking about the fact that next week we will be in the Easter season where people are going to be moving around and all sorts of things, having rituals. And one of the things that that particular livestock person was talking about was the fact that they had stocked up, they had prepared for this Easter season, and then there was the reality that the lockdown would then come into effect. A loss there that was very devastating. They were in fact the first few people that had felt the pinch of the lockdown, because immediately after the closure, which is at midnight today, they were left destitute, trying to figure out what they would do with all of the animals that they had stocked up for the many people that usually come to their doors to find animals for the Easter season.
Of course, we've been looking back at 1 year, Linda, but the reality is we're just moving into year 2. Restrictions are still with us. We're facing possible more restrictions this coming Easter weekend. A second Easter probably is going to be disrupted. What is the sense from people that you've spoken to today, Linda? Are they resolute? Are they accepting? Where is their emotion, the emotional sort of spiritual standpoint on all of this?
Well, I can certainly tell you, Sally, that the many people we've spoken to are aware of something, a term that is being used quite regularly now as we move to the Easter season, and that term is the third wave. They are saying that they're quite scared that this third wave will come after the, in fact, Easter season, and they are urging many people in South Africa to adhere to some of the regulations that are put in there to make sure that we at least flatten, if not keep the spread of COVID-19 to a minimum. But one of the things that specifically with people have been saying is the fact that they're also worried about the fact that as we move to the Easter season. They're quite concerned about the fact that there might in fact be some restrictions put in place as to maybe stop the spread of COVID-19 during the Easter season. Some are worried about what that will mean for their businesses. Some are questioning whether this will mean a stricter alert level of the lockdown, not what we've known in terms of the adjusted level 3 to today. So there are people that are concerned about the Easter season itself, what government will say moving towards the Easter season, but they are saying that they want to make sure that everyone keeps to the rules and regulations.
Yeah, I suppose, Lindo, 1 year on, we have learned a lot about how to live under a lockdown, but many of us have also been touched by the grief of loss of loved ones or the loss of livelihoods as well. Thank you very much, Lindokuhle Xulu in Johannesburg, Ronald Masinda in Cape Town, and Lethiwe Mdluli in Durban. Let's move